Over 60 million people visit New York City every year. Almost all of them see the same 5 things: Times Square, the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty, a slice of pizza, and a traffic jam. Then they go home. But New York hides an abandoned subway palace, a medieval monastery, more gold than Fort Knox, and a cemetery that was once more popular than Niagara Falls. These are 10 things nobody tells you about New York City, starting with the most famous park on Earth, which is far stranger than it looks. Number 1. Central Park is completely fake. Central Park looks like a piece of untouched nature that the city grew around. It's the opposite. Every meadow, every lake, every rocky outcrop was designed and built by hand in the 1800s. Workers moved millions of cartloads of soil and stone, planted hundreds of thousands of trees, and blasted through bedrock using more gunpowder than was fired at the Battle of Gettysburg. The lakes are artificial. The waterfalls are switched on. Even the natural forest in the north end, the ravine, was landscaped tree by tree. The park is 843 acres, bigger than the entire country of Monaco. And to build it, the city displaced roughly 1,600 people, including Seneca Village, a settlement founded by free black landowners in 1825. Its remains still sit under the park near West 85th Street, and archaeologists have been excavating it since 2011. The design was the result of a public competition won by Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux in 1858, the first landscaped public park in the United States. Their idea was radical: a democratic space where rich and poor would share the same lawns. It worked so well that nearly every major city park in America copied it. Today, Central Park gets around 42 million visits a year, making it the most visited urban park in the country. Most of those visitors never realize they're walking through a 19th century construction project. Nature, built from scratch, hiding in plain sight. Number 2. Grand Central ceiling is painted backwards. Grand Central Terminal has 44 platforms, more than any other train station in the world. But the strangest thing about it is above your head. The famous green ceiling in the main concourse shows the zodiac constellations painted across a Mediterranean sky, and they're backwards. The painters worked from a diagram meant to be viewed from above, so the entire sky is mirrored. When someone pointed out the mistake in 1913, the Vanderbilt family claimed it was intentional. The sky as God would see it, from the outside. Look closely near the constellation Cancer, and you'll find a small, dark rectangle. When the ceiling was restored in the 90s, cleaners left one patch untouched to show what decades of cigarette smoke had done. The dirt was almost entirely nicotine and tar. Downstairs, outside the oyster bar, 4 tiled arches form a whispering gallery. Stand facing one corner, whisper into the wall, and a person at the opposite corner, about 30 feet away, hears you perfectly. Nobody is completely sure the effect was even planned. And below all of it sits Track 61, a private platform connected to the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. President Franklin Roosevelt reportedly used it to move in and out of New York without the public seeing his wheelchair. His armored railcar could roll straight into a freight elevator. A backwards sky, a nicotine patch, a whispering wall, and a secret presidential track. That's one building. Number 3. The best view of the Statue of Liberty is free. The boat tour past the Statue of Liberty can cost you serious money, or you can take the Staten Island ferry and pay nothing. The big orange boats run 24 hours a day, every day of the year, carrying around 70,000 passengers on a typical weekday, roughly 25 million people a year. The ride from Lower Manhattan to Staten Island takes about 25 minutes, sails directly past the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island, and gives you the single best skyline view of Lower Manhattan available on the water. It's been completely free since 1997. Before that, the fare was 50 cents, and for over a century before that, a nickel. The ferry itself is far older than the statue it passes. A ferry service between Staten Island and Manhattan was run in the early 1800s by a teenage Cornelius Vanderbilt, who used the profits to build one of the largest fortunes in American history. Here's the trick tourists get wrong. You can't just stay on the boat for a round trip. Everyone has to get off at the St. George Terminal on Staten Island. Then you simply walk around and board the next ferry back, usually within 15 or 20 minutes. Locals use that gap to grab a beer at the terminal. Sunset rides put the statue on one side and the glowing skyline on the other. New York's most expensive view for exactly $0. Number 4. There's an abandoned palace under City Hall. The first subway station New York ever opened, in 1904, is still down there, and it looks nothing like the subway you know. City Hall Station was the showpiece of the brand new system. Curved Guastavino tile vaults, colored glass skylights set into the street above, brass chandeliers, and not a single straight line. It was designed to prove the subway could be beautiful, not just functional. It closed in 1945, and the reason is almost embarrassing. The station sits on a tight loop of track, and as trains got longer, the gap between the curved platform and the straight train cars became dangerously wide. Ridership had collapsed anyway. Barely 600 people a day were using it, since the Brooklyn Bridge station a few blocks away served more lines. So the city's most beautiful station simply shut its doors after 41 years. Here's what nobody tells you. It's still visible. The downtown 6 train uses the old loop to turn around after its last stop. Stay on the train past Brooklyn Bridge City Hall, and as it curves through the abandoned station, the chandeliers and skylights slide past the windows. A 10-second ghost of 1904. The New York Transit Museum also runs occasional guided tours inside, which sell out almost instantly. A century-old palace, 60 feet under the mayor's office, that most New Yorkers have never seen.
Number 5. You can ride a cable car for the price of the subway. New York has an aerial tramway, a genuine Alpine-style cable car, hanging over the East River, and it costs the same as a subway swipe. The Roosevelt Island Tramway climbs to about 250 feet, runs alongside the Queensboro Bridge, and crosses the river in roughly 3 minutes, with Midtown Manhattan spread out below you. When it opened in 1976, it was the first commuter aerial tramway in North America, and it was supposed to be temporary, a stopgap, until the island got a subway station. The subway arrived in 1989. The tram was too popular to kill. The island it serves has one of the darkest histories in the city. In the 1800s, it was called Blackwell's Island, and New York used it as a dumping ground, a penitentiary, a smallpox hospital, and a notorious lunatic asylum. In 1887, journalist Nellie Bly faked insanity to get committed there and wrote 10 Days in a Madhouse, an exposé so shocking it forced real reform and invented undercover investigative journalism in the process. The ruins of the smallpox hospital still stand at the island's southern tip, floodlit at night, the only ruin in New York City with landmark status. Past it sits Four Freedoms Park, a granite memorial to FDR that most tourists have never heard of. A cable car, a Gothic ruin, and the birthplace of undercover journalism, all for one subway fare. Number 6. Manhattan has a medieval monastery. At the northern tip of Manhattan, on a hill above the Hudson, there's a medieval European monastery. It's not a replica. The cloisters, a branch of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, was assembled in the 1930s from pieces of 5 actual French cloisters, some dating back to the 12th century, dismantled in Europe, shipped across the Atlantic stone by stone, and rebuilt in Fort Tryon Park. The money came from John D. Rockefeller Jr., and he didn't stop at the building. He donated the surrounding parkland to the city, and then, this is the detail nobody believes, he bought about 700 acres of the Palisades Cliffs across the river in New Jersey and preserved them, specifically so that nothing ugly could ever be built in the monastery's view. He purchased the scenery. Inside hang the unicorn tapestries, 7 woven panels from around 1500 showing the hunt of a unicorn. They're among the most famous artworks of the Middle Ages, and scholars still argue about what they mean: pagan allegory, wedding gift, or Christ's story. Rockefeller kept them in his own living room for years before donating them. The gardens are planted using species identified from medieval art and manuscripts, so even the herbs are historically accurate. Standing in the main cloister, with Gregorian chant playing and stone arcades around you, you are technically still on the A train line. Subway to the 12th century, one museum ticket. Number 7. This cemetery outdrew Niagara Falls. In the 1850s, the second most popular tourist attraction in New York State, behind only Niagara Falls, was a cemetery. Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn drew around 500,000 visitors a year. Families came for picnics, carriage rides, and the views. It sounds bizarre until you realize why. New York had no public parks yet. Greenwood, founded in 1838 with 478 acres of hills, ponds, and winding paths, was the most beautiful green space in the city. It just happened to be full of graves. Its popularity is the reason Central Park exists. The public's obvious hunger for landscaped ground convinced the city to hold the park design competition, and Greenwood's style directly influenced both Central Park and Prospect Park. The permanent residents are impressive. Composer Leonard Bernstein, artist Jean-Michel Basquiat, stained glass legend Louis Comfort Tiffany, newspaper rival turned neighbor Horace Greeley, and Boss Tweed, the most corrupt politician in the city's history. Battle Hill, the highest natural point in Brooklyn at about 200 feet, sits inside the grounds, the site of fierce fighting during the 1776 Battle of Brooklyn, now topped by a statue of Minerva, waving to the Statue of Liberty across the harbor. One more oddity, the Gothic entrance gates host a wild colony of bright green monk parakeets, descendants of birds that escaped a shipment at JFK Airport decades ago. Argentine parrots, living on a Victorian cemetery gate in Brooklyn. Number 8. New York sold an island for $1. 800 yards off the southern tip of Manhattan sits a 172-acre island, with no cars, no traffic lights, and almost no permanent residents. For 2 centuries, Governor's Island was closed to the public, first as a U.S. Army post, then as the largest Coast Guard base in the country. When the Coast Guard pulled out in the 90s, the federal government did something strange with this piece of land, sitting in the middle of one of the most expensive harbors on Earth. In 2003, it sold 150 acres of the island back to the people of New York for $1. The deal came with conditions. The island had to serve the public, and its historic forts had to be preserved. Castle Williams and Fort Jay, both built to defend the harbor before the War of 1812, are the reason the British never attacked New York in that war. The island is also where, in 1909, Wilbur Wright took off and flew around the Statue of Liberty in front of 1 million spectators, one of the first flights ever seen by a mass audience. Today, a ferry gets you there in about 8 minutes. There are lawns, art installations, a spa with a heated outdoor pool facing the skyline, glamping tents, and some of the tallest slides in the city, built into an artificial hill made partly of demolition rubble. An island the Army kept secret for 200 years is now New York's best picnic spot. A dead railroad became the city's most copied park. The High Line is a park built on top of an abandoned elevated freight railway, 30 feet above the streets of Manhattan's West Side. The original railway opened in 1934 to get freight trains off 10th Avenue, which had killed so many pedestrians it was nicknamed Death Avenue that the railroad hired men on horseback, the West Side Cowboys, to ride in front of trains waving red flags. The last train ran in 1980, pulling 3 carloads of frozen turkeys. Then the structure just sat there for 25 years, rusting, while property owners lobbied to tear it down. Nature didn't wait. Wildflowers, grasses, and even small trees seeded themselves in the gravel until a wild meadow was floating above the city. 2 neighborhood residents founded Friends of the High Line in 1999 and fought the demolition. The park opened in sections starting in 2009, its planting design deliberately mimicking the self-seeded wilderness that grew there during the abandoned years. It now draws around 8 million visitors a year, more than the Statue of Liberty. The economic effect was nuclear. Property values along the route exploded, billions of dollars in new development followed, and cities around the world began converting their own dead infrastructure, all citing the High Line by name. A structure New York spent decades trying to demolish became the most influential park of the 21st century, and the turkeys were the last ones to use it first. Number 10. There's more gold under this street than in Fort Knox. 80 feet below the streets of Lower Manhattan, resting on the bedrock of Liberty Street, sits the largest known stockpile of gold on Earth. The vault of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York holds hundreds of thousands of gold bars, for decades more than 6,000 tons, comfortably beating Fort Knox. Here's the twist. Almost none of it belongs to the United States. The vault is a gold hotel. Dozens of foreign governments and central banks store their reserves there, a habit that started after World War II, when Europe wanted its gold somewhere safe. Each country gets its own numbered compartment. The Fed officially doesn't confirm whose is whose. When one country pays another in gold, the transaction can be a man with a cart moving bars from compartment 12 to compartment 47, a few feet away. The handlers wear magnesium shoe covers, because a standard bar weighs about 27 pounds, roughly 400 troy ounces, and dropped gold breaks feet. Every bar is weighed and inspected on arrival, and the vault's main door is a 90-ton steel cylinder that seals airtight and watertight. The security is the bedrock itself. The vault sits below the water table, carved into solid rock, and there is no practical way to dig into it. In the movie Die Hard with a Vengeance, thieves robbed this exact vault. In reality, it has never been robbed. Trillions in gold, under a public sidewalk, guarded by geology. An artificial wilderness, a backward sky, a $1 island, and a subway ride to the Middle Ages. New York doesn't hide its secrets very well. Millions of people walk past them every day without looking. If this made you see the city differently, there's a whole world of places we're about to explain. One destination at a time. Subscribe, and tell me in the comments, which of these did you already know? Next stop, Orlando beyond the theme parks.